today.
Thanks for your patience. I know we're a few minutes late. What time does he always start? Right at 11:15?
Yes.
Oh, he's telling us why you're late.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, we're going to get started here now. Welcome to Thinking Thinking Biblically. Today, we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, I think, and that is, how much should we have religion in public schools? How much should we?
Yes.
Yes, okay, all right. So we're going to talk about this a little bit. In fact, it's really interesting, even in light of my sermon, there's been some connections since I put the notes together. There's been a few more connections that I'm making to a resurgence in post-millennialism. Didn't make my notes, but I'm sure we'll talk about it. All right, so let me get into this a little bit. Welcome, guys. Under the U.S. Constitution, public schools cannot, and this is the rules, it cannot promote or advance any particular religion. And they must respect the individual religious beliefs of students and staff. Okay, so that's probably nothing new to you guys. The U.S. Department of Education said in guidance on the matter last updated in May of 2023. Nothing in the First Amendment, however, converts the public schools into religion-free zones or requires students, teachers, or other school officials to leave their private religious expression behind at the schoolhouse door. So did you notice that? Nothing in what we're doing says this place should be religion-free. What have you experienced in your schools? Have you? Was that? Yeah. A lot of it was an attempt almost to make it religion-free. The only problem with that is even religion-free is a religion. Secular humanism is a religion. Even though it's not called that as a religion, but it really is. This idea about man or whatever being the top of the heap and everything goes through us, we get to decide everything. It actually is, it's a religion. And so I'm going to go through and I'm going to pick on a couple different things. I'm going to talk about prayer in schools. Should the school require students to read the Bible or other religious texts? And number 3, should we have 10 Commandments being displayed in schools? So those are the 3 topics that I'm going to cover today. And then we're going to have some discussion along the way as well. So let's talk prayer in schools. Students of all faiths have the right to organize prayers on campus. The federal guidance says, as long as those activities don't disrupt school activities. Any limitations that schools set must be applied consistently to religious and non-religious speech, and they must not favor a particular religion. Okay, so you got that. All right, I'm going to give you some court cases. 1962. Engel versus Vitale. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled that a New York school could not require daily recitations of a prayer composed by the state's Board of Regents. So 1962, that's when the state's Board of Regents couldn't make the school have to do a prayer. How many of you grew up going to a public school in which prayer happened in schools? I went to a school in which every day we had the Pledge of Allegiance. So, over the loudspeaker, somebody would come on, they would get up, and then we would do the Pledge of Allegiance. And then after that, there was a prayer done by the principal over the loudspeaker for the entire school. Didn't think anything of it. But now I look back and be like, wow, I wonder if she could have gotten in trouble for that. Now granted, this was in the deep South 1980s when I was down there, so Stranger Things times, I know. Okay, so that was 1962. 1963. Abington School District versus Shemp. The court struck down a Pennsylvania state law that required school-led recitations of Bible verses and the Lord's Prayer. We didn't talk about the Lord's Prayer this morning, but how many of you grew up stating the Lord's Prayer whenever maybe it's church service or whatever else? I guess back here in 1963, there were some schools who were still doing a everyday recitation of the Lord's Prayer. And so in 1963, they said, nope, you can't do that. The case involved a Unitarian family who did not believe in the Holy Trinity or in an anthropomorphic God as conveyed in the King James Bible. I thought it was interesting. Their son protested mandated school prayers by leaving an open Quran on his desk.
Oh.
The court overturned the state law even after Pennsylvania lawmakers amended it to allow students to opt out. Which, did you know that when it comes to the stating of the Pledge of Allegiance, you are not obligated to do it?
Yeah.
Yeah, thought that was interesting. I didn't realize that. It says this. This was what the court's opinion said back in '63. While the free exercise clause of the First Amendment clearly prohibits the use of state action to deny the rights of free exercise to anyone, it has never meant that a majority could use the machinery of the state to practice its beliefs. To use the machinery of the state to practice its beliefs. Here's a more recent one, Lee versus Weissman. Weissman, yeah. This is about sanctioning prayer at student events. In 1992 decision, Lee versus Weissman, the court held that rabbi-led prayers at a public school graduation ceremony amounted to unconstitutional state-sponsored religion. And in 2000 decision, Santa Fe School District versus Doe, the court ruled that a school's practice of having a student-led prayer over a public address system before high school football games could be considered public speech and therefore a violation of the First Amendment. So having a student pray. My dad, I remember growing up, they would have football games. And they would always ask a local pastor to do the prayer before the football game. And so over the loudspeaker, we would do the Pledge of Allegiance or the Star Spangled Banner, and then there would be a prayer, and then play ball or whatever they were saying at the game. But I can remember my dad getting up over the loudspeaker at my high school, saying a prayer. That would have been 1980 something. Well, in this particular thing, even a pastor couldn't do that anymore. That was 1992, and then it says not even a student could get up and do it anymore.
But the Pledge of Allegiance says right in it, in God we trust.
Some people want that out of there.
I thought that part was added after, like there's the original pledge and then they added in God, under God.
Yes.
They added it
added
before
that.
I was born.
Yeah.
Thought it was in the 50s. I thought that it was added.
54.
Was that 54?
When we had to differentiate ourselves from the communists.
Yeah.
Was that what it was?
Yeah,
Really?
it was a thing to fight the communists.
Oh my goodness, I did not know that. That's interesting.
Isn't that nice?
So what is your thought about student-led prayer? Do you agree or disagree? Do you believe that a student should be allowed to do a public prayer, a student? Or do you think constitutionally that's right? We shouldn't let a student get up.
Yeah, they're forgetting the get my words right. The Congress cannot establish or prohibit. They're forgetting the prohibit part.
Like having and the school endorsing the student to do a prayer publicly addressing the entire school or a segment of an event, that's the school endorsing that action.
Even though I've heard it, even maybe you've seen it post, the position or the opinions expressed in this article or whatever do not necessarily reflect the whatever of the institution or whatever. But I see where you're coming from. You're right. There is at least an implicit acceptance of it as this is what we would accept. Would you be upset if at a high school game or a student event somebody got up and prayed to Muhammad?
Yeah. Yeah. Or Satan.
Or Satan. If they got up and did a Satanist prayer. I'll never forget, I went to Davenport University. I went to their graduation. This would have been, this was when I first got here. Because I think it was when my brother-in-law, Mike, graduated. So this was a long time ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, they had the pastor from Fountain Street Church.
Ah.
He got up, Fountain Street Church, he got up and addressed the assembly or whatever. And I'll never forget how he started. Oh God, from whom all religions come and to whom all religions go, we pray to you. And I was like, I was still a very sheltered whatever. I grew up in church. I was like, what did he just say? Well, I had no idea who Fountain Street was. Well, now it makes total sense, but I'll never forget the opening to his prayer. I was like, oh my God. Because in his mind, there is, all religions come from you, all religions come back to you. It doesn't matter which flavor you want, just pick a flavor. So, would you be okay? Great point. Would you be okay if somebody got up and prayed to Satan before a school game?
No.
Personally, no, but other people see it as equality.
Sure. All right. 2022 Supreme Court case, Kennedy versus Bremerton School District, centered on Joseph Kennedy. Maybe you guys remember this one. He was a high school football coach who sued the Bremerton, Washington School District after administrators told him to discontinue his practice of praying on the 50-yard line immediately after each game, after students, players, and even coaches began to join him. What did you think about that one? Were you in favor of it? Were you in disagreement? What did you think?
That's the one's a movie now, right? Isn't that a movie?
Is it a movie now? I don't know.
It is a movie.
It is a
It's pretty
movie.
good.
Is it?
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
a really
it was
good
about
movie.
8 months ago it came out.
Yeah.
I don't remember that court case. I remember Roe v. Wade, but I don't remember this one.
But they actually won the case, so.
Yeah.
They did. Now I'll explain why.
It was voluntary.
It was voluntary, but there was concern about the safety of crowds. Also, that the highly visible practice would appear to be school-sponsored, and that students would feel a sense of implicit coercion. That's why the school board asked Kennedy to move his prayers to an alternate location. And when the coach continued his prayers on the field, the school board placed him on administrative leave and then declined to renew his contract. So they said, you can't do that here because of these reasons. High Court, interestingly enough, sided with the coach, ruling that his prayers were private speech protected by the First Amendment, and that the Constitution neither requires nor permits schools to suppress such religious expression by employees to avoid the appearance of sanctioned religious practices. So that goes back to this whole thing that you mentioned earlier. If they let him pray in the field, there is almost an understanding that the school is saying, we agree you can do that. Critics of the Kennedy decision have argued that it created a confusing legal landscape for school districts. The opinion also alarmed some representatives of religions that a minority in the United States, like Islam. For instance, if somebody would have gotten out in the middle of the 50-yard line and grabbed his prayer shawl or prayer rug and then had everybody bow down and say a prayer to Allah, would we say anything? Could we say anything? Agree or disagree?
They're legally allowed to. The problem is, they can't take one religion over another. So I came from a very diverse high school over by Detroit. We had Muslims, we had Christians, we had Catholics, atheists, we had, what's the one where the ones that you're not allowed to have birthday presents and stuff.
Jehovah's Witness?
We had Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yeah.
And so our school basically said, we're not suppressing anyone. Feel free to do whatever you want as long as it's not disrespectful. So we had people that signed up to do the Pledge of Allegiance, and afterwards they prayed to Allah. We had people go up and rewrite the Pledge of Allegiance to agree with their religion and read it over the loudspeaker, which was also quite interesting. But they're
To the Pledge of Allegiance.
they rewrote it, yes, to fit their religion. So that was interesting.
One nation under Allah or something like that?
No, they took out a whole bunch of God stuff and talked about how we were under science. So that was interesting.
Okay.
I
And
don't think that was the Pledge of Allegiance.
Yeah, I don't think that's what
yeah,
it
so
was.
that was kind of interesting. And we also had parents that threatened to sue because we had someone who just left the building during Pledge of Allegiance, and the school board was like, you can't do that,
Oh,
you know,
boy.
and he's like,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not allowed to because I have super strict Jehovah Witness parents, and I'm technically not allowed to listen to the Pledge of Allegiance, and like, so that was a whole thing, so then they just let him go outside, you know, so it's just like, the whole, it's, you know, we can't say yay Christianism in schools and then also say boo any other religion in schools, because then it takes away religious freedom for all.
Yeah.
Which personally we can't agree with it, but we should, like, it was also a great opportunity to see how other people viewed things, seeing their religion and beliefs, and gives you a talking point and opportunity as well. So it's like, if the coach prayed and said, you can come, and if you want to pray to, you know, like, we're not dismissing other religions, like, if you want to come and bring your mat to Allah, you know, like, equality for all, and
Sure.
whether or not people actually do it, you know, like,
Well, you're kind of put into a case, you're kind of put into a situation, if you're going to allow for Christianity, then you have to allow for the other things. So then, does that mean that you say, okay, you know what, we are going to try to keep this a religion-free zone? Remembering that there is no such thing as a religion-free zone. It's impossible. It's impossible. Bible says, you know, if you worship me, then you're not going to worship these other things. If you're worshiping these other things, then you're not going to be worshiping me. It's, no matter what, there's always, you know, you cannot serve both God and money. That was what one of the things. You cannot serve both God and science. You cannot serve both God and whatever. It's, one has to be a priority. Yes, Sam?
If you're going to take it, I feel like, from just living a godly life in a perspective of living in the body of Christ, there's a lot of legalism that happens, and I feel like if we're going to be, I don't know, in our Bibles and really applying what God, kind of what His intent for humanity is to the way that we live our lives, and even outreach to people, it takes into account governments, it takes into account that there's going to be non-Christians, and it takes into account that, yes, God, He allows people to have free will, so why shouldn't we? We should allow people to have free will and just express the love of God to them, not just live in the legalism. Like, yes, there are so many laws that we deal with in sin, and it's all mixed up and messed up, but really, let's put love on the front line first before all the rest.
Truly, it is the way we live. It makes way bigger of a difference than laws or whatever else. Many people who are arguing for some of these things are arguing because this is where our country was founded this way. Boy, when you go back and look at the history of our country, you will see that many of the founding fathers were actually clergy.
yeah.
I had no idea about this. Even just the amount of things that the laws and things that were written at the beginning that reflected biblical principles, biblical values. You're like, wow, you know, even going through and looking at some of the founding fathers, many of their writings, I didn't write it down, but one of the things was if you take away Christianity, the laws don't work. That was their perception. It was the foundation of this system of law is a Judeo-Christian ethic. That's the foundation of these laws. So if you take away this, then these laws are no different than anybody else's. So there are those who would say, America was founded on Christian principles, therefore, so what if we put Christianity as the dominant religion? So what if we do this? My question is, how does that align with our biblical position? Should we behind that be going and saying, yeah, you should do this, you should make that the dominant thing. Yes, let's make sure we can have prayer in schools, let's have the Bible, and who cares about the Islamic people? Who cares about the whatever? You know what? There's a Christian nation. Should we be like, yeah, let's go there? What do you think?
I mean, a lot of it kind of seems to me like sometimes it's just about trying to win an argument. Like, oh, we got the Ten Commandments plastered on the wall. We won this argument. Yeah. Is that changing the heart? Is a Muslim coming in there? Oh, okay. Oh no, I'm all wrong. This is on the wall. I now believe in Christ. I mean,
Yeah, Mark.
should we just win an argument and then we gotta, we got some more votes or something, and that That's the whole point of it. I mean, I
Solved.
guess.
Solved, yeah.
I
That's
didn't know
good,
I
Mike.
didn't have to steal. I had that was a thing before. Now I know.
Dang it, I coveted. Ah, yeah. Aspen, you were going to say something?
Yeah, it's not talking about by date. If we were to say that the United States is a Christian nation, it becomes a point that if Christianity is the dominant religion in this country, we're seemingly like we're trying to force that religion onto us, even to us that don't believe that God is real.
You guys raise extremely valid points here, which is, I think, part of this whole thing of how we are to think biblically about this. We're going to come back to this, but I'm going to talk about just a couple more things, okay? Should schools require students to read the Bible or other religious texts? For instance, courts have held that while academic lessons on the Bible and other religious texts like the Quran are permissible, devotional readings in public schools violate the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment. Okay, so you can't pull out a Devo from the Bible or from the Quran and say, "Hey, we're going to think about this today." But here's the question, though: should students have Bibles in classrooms for the purpose of literary or historical reasons?
Yes.
June 2024. So that's pretty recent. Oklahoma State Superintendent Ryan Walters directed schools to put a Bible in every classroom. A mandate. And to require teachers to incorporate the Bible into classes for 5th through 12th grades. So he put a law together in Oklahoma that said teachers are required to have Bibles in their classrooms and they are to incorporate the Bible into their lessons. Not for devotional reasons, but for historical, literary reasons.
Like in the math class?
Absolutely like in math class, yeah. Just like that.
There's weights and measures in the Bible, right?
That's right. Let's go back to 3 C's of flour and yeah.
I mean, in the Old
Yeah.
Testament,
Convert
they
cubits
saw
to
symbolism as numbers. They really didn't use numbers as much prevalent as they do.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's
So-
very Western. You're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, it's very relatable, you know? They
Yeah.
could use that, introduce you to math.
How many of you wish you were more Eastern when it comes to numbers?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we call that evangelistically speaking. You know, when you're a little fudgy. Supporters of calls to incorporate Scripture into classwork argue that students need a basic level of biblical literacy to understand common references in literature. Also, to understand stories depicted in significant works of art. Can you imagine? Can you think David? You know, the sculpture, Michelangelo when he did, or even the Sistine Chapel. Some of those things. You need the Bible to understand stories depicted in significant works of art and the perspectives and beliefs of historical figures.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Agree? Disagree? What do you think? You need the Bible. Just a sec. Let me get to the other side. And then I'll...
Okay.
Critics say that directives like Walter's are an effort to insert Christianity into public life as the country becomes more religiously diverse. Walter's new rule requires only the Bible, not the Quran, not any other one, as the primary text. And clearly this guy is a very outspoken Christian. I will also say something else. He is a post-millennialist.
Just something to add to your
His-
argument.
His idea is that it is our duty to bring Christianity into all spheres of influence because the Christian ethic, the Christian value system is the way to make it work. How many of you have heard of the term Christendom? You heard of that before? I had no idea that Christendom and postmillennialism are like this. I've used that phrase many times. But the idea of Christendom is, so just like the word kingdom means the domain of the king, Christendom means the domain of Christianity. So we're here to establish Christendom. So here you have a governor in Oklahoma, or was he the state he's state superintendent. So he's the state superintendent who says, I'm going to bring my faith and I'm going to bring it to bear. Now, you can do it just in historical ways, literary ways, but you're going to use the Bible. But not the Quran, not Mary Baker Eddy's whatever book over here, no, not some of these other things. This is what you're going to use. Okay, so, the other thing was, and then I'll go to you, Sarah. The other thing was this. Those who are critics say, well, what about those who have a different way of interpreting the Bible? Are you going to give teachers the authority to be able to incorporate into their classrooms their version of the Bible? Sure. How many of you have realized that people have differing opinions on what's included in this?
Yeah.
So now you're going to say to that teacher, you have to use this. Well, I don't believe it. You can't believe a lick of this thing, but I'm going to use it anyway, so I'm going to pick all the verses that make fun of the Bible. You know, that's what I'm going to do. Anyway, Sarah.
So, have an amazing history professor in college, and
Christian college nonetheless, right?
yes.
Okay.
But he is in order to understand so much of history and even why our country is founded, you have to incorporate the understanding of the Bible, because the Bible was so pivotal in understanding how Europe was fashioned, the Crusades, Constantine, so many global events founded on the belief of the Bible.
Sure.
So trying to understand so much of history with removing it doesn't make sense because you don't understand that motivation.
Yeah.
Same with other, beliefs as to why China and Japan and a lot of things didn't try and go and conquer the world, because their religion is kind of the opposite, we don't have to conquer to convert people, a little bit less, and then, the people of Islam as well, going into what they believe with the Quran, into how they perceive the world around them, and, perceive war and all this stuff.
Sure.
You can't remove the main dominant religion.
Conquering the infidels and whatever else.
Yeah. And then I had a strong atheist literary teacher in high school. But she said, you cannot truly understand literature if you ignore the world's best-selling literature book.
Interesting.
And strong atheist, but she's like, we had to read the Bible because
So
she's
you would support the idea of Bible being read in schools for the purpose, at least, of literary.
Yeah, because she was like, Christians are stupid, which was also interesting because she hated me because I was a Christian.
Yeah.
But that was a whole thing. But the thing was, we went in and studied the Bible, and she's like, what's the appeal as a literature nature to everyone to make it the best-selling book in human history? And so we looked a lot at the Psalms and the poetry and how it appeals to hurting people and stuff like this, strictly from a literature nature,
So would you agree, disagree to use it in school curriculum?
Yeah. God's word does not return void.
Spoken from a Christian.
Does anyone remember Jim Moore at Byron Center?
Oh, yeah.
And he taught
Oh, yeah.
there, and he pitched a history class, and he went through his religions, and he went through all the religions.
Yes.
And that was his methodology of being able to talk about the Bible.
Yeah. And it was well received, too.
It was, and he taught it here. And I agree with you, because you really can't understand some of the issues of the world without understanding some of these religions.
That's right.
More than Christianity, the Islam and everything. So I think that was a very...
Yeah, even just look at one of the foundational tenets of Islam, which is this world should be brought to be followers of Muhammad.
Right.
That's what it is. And those who don't are infidels.
Right.
And we know what they're... So right in their core tenets, it's kind of there. Versus when you look at the Bible's very different. Love your enemy. Do good to those who persecute you. It's just a very different mindset than that. So, okay. One last topic here, and that is 10 Commandments. This has reached the news recently, which is why I thought it'd be good for us to talk a little bit about. Over the last 2 years, legislatures in several states have called for the 10 Commandments to be displayed on classroom walls. Louisiana, Arkansas, and Texas want this mandated. In other words, not just given permission, but actually, you better put it up there, or else. Louisiana Attorney General Liz Morrell argued that teachers could display the text. This is funny. Teachers could display the text of the Ten Commandments alongside classroom rules, historical quotes, cartoon jokes, and pop culture references to add context without promoting a specific religion.
Oh, so they have to mix it.
I just thought it was funny, you know? I mean, here you have this, you know, we're poking fun, whatever the classroom is, we're poking fun at some churchy thing or whatever else, and then right there you got the Ten Commandments. It's just kind of funny. Like, here's your alternative opinion. But from what she's saying, you don't have to post it over the door and then everybody has to bow to it when you walk in. You can post it wherever, but you have to post it. Period.
Does it have to be King James?
Yeah, there you go. No, it has to be like, who was the guy? The guy in the original Moses? Charlton Heston.
Oh.
You have to have Charlton Heston's quote, you know, playing on the loudspeaker. In 1980, the Supreme Court struck down this requirement in Kentucky in the case of Stone versus Graham. Their conclusion: it violates the First Amendment's prohibition on the establishment of religion because the Ten Commandments have no secular legislative purpose and serve no educational function.
Well, that's not true.
It's good to teach the children not to murder. Very good.
Yeah.
Once again, the proponents said that laws in most countries were built around this sort of system of law. It has been a part of law for however many years. Also, did you know that, I forget how many there are, I think it's more than 10. I believe it's more than 10, but there are more than 10 images or whatever of the Ten Commandments in the Supreme Court room, their meeting room. There's over 10 depictions on the walls, in the doors, whatever else. It's the Ten Commandments that are in there. So I find it ironic.
What do the images look like?
They look like the tablets.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
Yeah, but that picture is represented on the walls, in the doors of the Supreme Court chamber that struck down. I find that ironic, let's just say.
Yeah, just take a peek behind the door. They're written right there.
Yes. Yeah.
What's the purpose of putting it in every classroom? I mean, I don't necessarily support that. I would much rather have students know about the grace of God rather than the rules.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and they're pretty common sense outside of, in this day and age, adultery, you know, but people know I'm going to go to prison if I'm caught, if I murder, if I steal. I mean, it's not rocket science, really. I'm sorry, God, but it's not. You know, I mean, you know, I mean, He created the foundation, and the laws pretty much support that. So I don't understand what the point of that is, to put it in every classroom.
The point is that our nation has one running rampant with people that are doing these things.
But
I feel like
up
the
on
people
the
that are
wall
doing these
isn't
things
gonna
already
help.
know
You've
they
got
just
to
know they're
hit
doing
the
wrong.
heart.
Right.
You got to say.
But I believe their point was that if you expose them more to it, maybe they'll.
Yeah.
I think it goes back, I feel like it goes back to this, almost this idea of the good old days. You know? You remember the good old days where people got along and where people weren't, you know, fighting over this, and there weren't school shootings and there weren't whatever.
The big news was somebody's cabin was broken and somebody stole a lantern from my room. It wasn't.
Yeah.
8 people were shot down and.
So this good old day mentality is like, almost like it's almost a false narrative, because it says, okay, you remember the good old days when people got along better, when people did that? Well, guess what? Back in those days, we used to pray in school. There were 10 commandments that were on the walls and all those things. So good old days equal schools having these things. And to Mark's point, which I think is a very valid point, just because I post the 10 commandments, just because I have a prayer, doesn't mean that people are going to go, oh, I was wrong this whole time. Man, I really need Jesus in my life now. In fact, it almost tends to go the other way, to your point, Kathy, which is when we say, okay, I'm going to post the 10 commandments. So what do people assume? Christianity equals
Legalism.
legalism.
Rules.
Mhm.
The
Rules.
Don't rules. Don't
Exactly.
do, don't
Yeah.
do, don't do, don't do. I'm
Exactly.
loving that. It's exasperating because
Yeah.
you're not perfect and it just shows you on the wall. You are not perfect.
Romans 7.
Every day.
That's
every
the
minute,
purpose of
you're
the
not
law.
perfect.
That's the purpose, is to show us our need of Christ. So if we were to say we want the 10 Commandments in schools, do we?
I don't.
Yeah.
I
How
do.
about some of them?
I think a lot of that, making the schools mandating the schools to try to educate
I
people
like what
about
came out first.
Christianity.
I caught it.
I feel like it's more likely to just infuriate the people who are against it, and they're not going. You have to show them love and grace to draw them to your side, instead of you're not going to be able to push them to your side. You catch more
Flies with
flies
honey,
with honey
yeah.
rather than.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I think you'll get some people half-hearted conversions who will, as soon as they leave the school, are just going to fall away. But you need to capture the heart and not just like, oh, I'll just do whatever you say until I'm an adult, I'm out of school, and then I'm going to go do drugs or whatever.
Yeah.
Well, and for that point, isn't it still on our money and God we trust? So if people are using money, don't they have access to a phrase
Yeah,
that's
but
going to
it's not in
convert
the
them?
courtroom anymore. Wasn't there a big case over that?
that whole thing, and God, that's another issue, is should we as Christians, should we fight for that to stay? You know,
I think the removal is the symptom and not the problem. It shows the decline of the majority belief is slipping away. I don't think mandating such things is going to fix the country. You gotta capture the heart of the people, and then the rest will follow. Because you're not gonna be able to turn the country into a theocracy and dictate Christianity.
Where the people's hearts are at, that's where they're at.
So I want to read a few more things as we're closing up here. Our country was founded upon biblical principles, and Bible reading and prayer were long part of the daily schedule in public schools. Although our culture wasn't directed by the Judeo-Christian ethic for the first 150 years, the U.S. is currently not a Christian nation.
Yeah.
We are a post-Christian nation. That's who we are. And so to assume to make the 10 Commandments, to make these things be present in schools, is inserting and putting a legalistic practice on a post-Christian environment, which is only going to be received with probably disgust or whatever else. But here's the thing. There was a study that was put out by the Beckett Fund. Have you guys heard of the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty? I don't know if you've ever heard about that. The Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty released its annual Religious Freedom Index. 57% of Americans agree that religious freedom is inherently public. 57%, so a small majority, but a majority of Americans agree that religious freedom is inherently public and that Americans should be free to share their faith in public spaces, such as at school, work, or on social media. That represents a 5-point rise in the number since 2020,
Oh, that's weird.
which I thought was interesting. One of the things that, no matter what you think about our president, pro or con, one of the things that I read was in 2024, he signed something that made it legal for you as a federal employee to share your faith with somebody.
Oh, that's nice.
That you could actually talk to somebody about your faith. Now, once again, whatever you think about it, it seems to reflect the thing that says the Americans are kind of fed up with being told I can't express my faith, even in an individual way, in the world today. So even then, now as a federal employee, I can't get punished or whatever else for telling my coworker next to me about my faith. Thought this was interesting. This was something that I'll close with this, and I'll see if you guys have any other closing comments. I want to say this, the importance and the impact of your private faith. Because what we're talking about here is using the government, using whatever to insert prayer, Bible reading, 10 Commandments. That's what we're using. We're saying, should we agree that the government should mandate this? Should we agree that the government shouldn't prohibit it? Should we agree that the government should make this something that's going to happen or not happen, whatever? That's our thing. But here's what I have. The importance and impact of your private faith. I went to school by the name of James Wood High School. Now, by the time I went to James Wood High School, which is in Northern Virginia, there was no prayer in schools. The school in Virginia was very different than my school in Alabama. Two very different cultures. By the time I got to the school in Virginia, it was a very different place. But I had the typical kids in school. There was a few Christians, but my graduating class was 495. So I didn't know a lot of them, especially because I only met them my junior year when I moved there. But I remember there were a couple kids who were in there, and they were kind of the partiers. That's kind of who they were in high school. I graduated from high school in 1991, and then I went to community college in town. It was called Lord Fairfax. That's right. Go community college. I went to community college, and I'm in the English class, and I see these two kids that I went to school with in high school in community class, in English class at community college. I'll never forget. Obviously, they came to know Jesus between the summer of their senior year and their freshman year in college. Because here I am in secular English class, and these two guys, I'm sitting right in the middle of the classroom. Whenever they would have an English paper, they would always use their paper, no matter what it was, to share their faith. And they would get up front if we had to do presentations, and they would share their faith. And I remember sitting there, as the pastor's kid, who was still going to school, still going to church, heavily involved, doing things, serving in the church, scared to death to share my faith in a public environment. I remember being pretty impacted by that. And I'm thinking, I think if more people like these two guys were willing to share their faith privately, we wouldn't need the government to put 10 Commandments up on the walls. We wouldn't need the Bible being done. So I think it would make far more of an impact if actually students and or teachers simply lived out their faith in the public sphere. See, I think 10 Commandments in schools and prayer and all those things, while I don't think they're bad necessarily, I think they're easy things for Christians to go, as long as there's 10 Commandments on the walls, I don't have to do anything. And I think the more we live in a world in which is darker, the more reason we have to let our faith shine. And the darker the world, the more that our light does shine out there. So personally, that's the way that I think biblically about some of this.
What's a biblical example of Christ being involved with the government to have the government push religion?
Yeah.
I don't see it.
Yeah. Even though the government was extremely oppressive back in the New Testament, extremely oppressive, and yet the amount of times that we're told to revolt against the government, whatever else, it's non-existent.
Right.
Yeah. Good point, Kathy. Any other comments? Any other? What's one thing you learned today?
I don't know, just to think more deeply about this topic in the sense of government and how we should be living as Christians in the body of Christ, and actually confronting the issues instead of just letting it slide by.
Okay. Good. Anybody else?
Let my kids go to a private school.
Yeah, Tyrus.
Yeah. Well, that goes into the whole thing is should the state allow parents to use school vouchers to go to private schools? That's another big issue that's out there. I was seeing all that. Boy, there's a bunch of rabbit holes you can go down when you're getting into this stuff.
I think for me, just ongoing understanding. Anytime I hear about Christianity being moved forward in government places, I put in Quran in place of that. If that were happening, how would I feel? Or even, with anything. How would I feel if I were being mandated I had to have an abortion if my child were,
Yeah.
And it turns my perspective a little. I don't have answers to everything, but it gives me more compassion to the people who I feel are fighting against what I believe, because they're only trying to fight for what they believe. I disagree with it, but you know, it puts me in a place of trying to understand their position more than fighting against them.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's where I want to be, is more a listening ear and trying to understand.
Good point, Kathy. Good point. All right, I'll close in prayer. Lord, continue to, as your word says, make us wise as serpents and harmless as doves in this age. There is a day coming when you will be in charge. You will rule, you will reign, and it is quite the day that it's going to be. But until that time, God, we are to live with the gospel being the primary message that we're giving out to people, because the Ten Commandments are not going to save somebody. Just putting a Bible in a classroom is not going to save anybody. Even just having some rote prayer is not going to save anybody. It truly is a personal decision which we accept what you've done. So God, may you make us bold as we go out, whether we are in private schools or public schools or public nonprofits or secular workspaces or Christian workspaces, wherever it is. God, I pray that we would actually live our faith out, that we would make your name great, that your ways would clearly be shown that they work, and that people would say, man, I want to see that. I want more of that for myself. So, God, thank you that we have your word, though, to keep us grounded. May we be good citizens and good representatives of you today. In Jesus' name, amen. Have a good week, everybody.
You too.